Okay, sounds like that is the end of the music, and this is the start of our show, our webinar, and it's the last webinar of the year for 2021. So welcome. I am your host, Lotus Lane, and I'm the Industry Relations Advocate at Free Speech Coalition. And these webinar series were sponsored by Chatterbait, so we thank them for bringing this to the people. And I will go ahead and introduce our beautiful panelists. So we have Cy Jaden Smith, and they can go ahead and introduce themselves for us.
Sajid and Lilith. Sajid
Oh,
and Smith.
Lilith,
Wow.
sorry. I'm sorry. I need to wear my glasses. I'm like having a hard time seeing. My vision
I
is
mean that could be my rebrand at some point. It's got a nice tone to it.
alternate, you know.
So yeah, hi, I'm Sajid and Lilith. My pronouns are they, them. I'm dialing in from Australia, Wurundjeri land, otherwise known as Melbourne. Yeah, I'm a full service escort, a BDSM provider, content creator, musician. I write stuff, and yeah, I do a bunch of things. Yeah.
Very much an artist. Love that. And then we also have Stoya.
Hello. I started performing in pornography in 2006. I still dabble occasionally. I also dabble in production and mostly am a writer. I've written about the porn industry for the New York Times twice, The Guardian once. I have a book called Philosophy, Pussycats, and Porn that captures a very specific time in pornography before the pandemic changed it all. And that's me.
Right. Thank you. And Jiz.
Hi, I'm Jiz Lee, and I'm a porn performer who has been working since 2005, but sporadically working in queer porn mostly, dabbling. And I get so nervous public speaking, so I'm going to be like, shit, I already fucked things up. And Zoom doesn't make it any easier than talking to a laptop. I'm from Maui, Hawaii, and I live in Oakland, Ohlone Land in San Francisco Bay Area. And I work behind the scenes with Pink and White Productions, and coming out was a big thing for me in porn and otherwise. And so I did a book about it. So I'm excited to talk to you about the book about coming out like a porn star. All right.
One of the best covers ever. No worries about messing up. I already completely fucked up one of our first guest names. So moving on to the very beautiful Izzy Lesh. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, hello guys. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Izzy Lush. I'm a performer since 2018. I'm from Colombia. I just moved to the States, and yeah, all this journey for me has been incredible, and I'm glad I can share it with you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. You look so dang cozy over there too. I'm jealous of that big coat you got on. Okay, so let's get started talking about this. I just have to say, I love how like well-rounded we all are. We're like from all corners of the earth right now. So obviously the first topic is going to be like, what made you want to even get started into sex work? Most people of our age and time didn't come from sex workers. So what made you want to get into this? We could go ahead and start with Izzy, if you want. We'll go backwards.
Okay, I always love acting, so I was like doing that, but then I saw this movie from my favorite director, that is Love, and they have sex on it, and I was like, oh my god, I need to do this, like I need to act and also have sex, because like they never show it on like normal films. So I found out that they were like doubles, and actually the sex was like real but made from porn stars or performers. And I was like, okay, I want to do that then. And I started like looking for everything. I love like my first point of like porn was Erica Lost. So I was like, okay, I want to do that. And then I plan of moving here, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a try over there. And yeah, that's basically how I start doing porn. I have always been super sexually and super like open, and my partners weren't that good in sex, so I was like, why not porn? And yeah, it was a lot of things. I think I'm still like knowing myself through this career I choose, and I'm really happy about it. But yeah, that's mostly it.
Awesome. That's very interesting. You said that you're learning to know yourself better through this, because I feel that's very true. Jiz, what was it like that made you decide to jump into sex work?
For me, it was moving to the Bay Area and just being sexual and exploring that and coming out as queer, coming out as polyamorous, and going to a lot of sex parties and just kind of like reveling in this bodily gender exploration. And then I saw at a small theater, I saw queer porn that looked like the community that I was a part of. And it was for the first time I saw sex in, you know, in a medium, like in porn, that looked like me, that looked like something that like I wanted to be a part of. And it was like you know, this big epiphany of like looking at the screen and being like, I want to do that. And I think it was Sir Production, like Hard Love and How to Fuck in High Heels was one of their films. But there was also Please Don't Stop that came out around that era. I actually don't remember exactly what porn video it was. It was like one of those, but it was so exciting. And so the moment I had the first opportunity, which was pure luck, I think, running into Sid Blackovich and Shine Louise Houston at the time, who I still work with, to be able to have that opportunity to like represent our sexuality on camera in a way that feels, you know, genuine and joyful for us. And I keep doing it because of that, because I feel like it's gender affirming, at least in terms of like the feedback that I get from viewers, that it means a lot to see our reflections of our sexuality and who we are as humans on screen in a really tangible way. It's amazing. And, you know, I believe that we're all capable and deserving of a happy and healthy sexuality. So like, you know, this is kind of part of whether I'm doing it on screen or I'm working behind the scenes to bring that sort of ethos to actuality.
That is so amazing and brilliant. What an answer. I feel like San Francisco at that time was such an epicenter to bring out people like you know, to the forefront and shine, and everyone else that came out of it.
It was like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah. That's so cool. Like starry eyes right now. Okay. And Stoya, how did you decide to get into sex work?
You know, first it was nude pictures and it was my roommate taking them. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like fun. But like, what if I panic? And he was like, let's take the pictures. I'll keep them on a hard drive. I won't even edit them. You let me know when you're ready. And like a month went by and I was like, let's do this. And then one of the websites I was naked on was like, will you come to Los Angeles and have sex with this woman? And I'm like, sure. But if I panic halfway through, or if I panic halfway through makeup, like you just have to accept that you get nothing or half a scene, like everything until I panic, you can use. But if I bail, that has to be okay. And they're like, sure. And then Digital Playground offered me a contract. They got me into their office with the promise of Sophia Santi, who I never did a connected sex scene with. We were in one orgy scene together, but that was it. So I feel like they owe me a Sophia Santi. But then I was like, okay, well, penises are like a whole extra thing. What's the health and safety stuff, right? Like, I'm not afraid of chlamydia, but like, how do we deal with like HIV screening? Oh yeah, that's a lot harder to explain too. How am I going to feel at 35? And now I am 35 and I feel actually exactly the way I thought I'd feel, which is if you can't deal with me as I am, then I don't really need you in my life.
Yeah. That's good. Strong personality, strong attitude about what you know and what you want. And then Cy Jaden, what made you decide to get into sex work?
So yeah, I was always, you know, very sexually aware, very sexual in my personal life, and it was an interesting time in my life when everything kind of imploded at the same time. Like I was in a long-term relationship that ended. I was working in corporate and just hating it, desperately hating it in my life, and the complete misalignment of values with that. You know, I was sort of half corporate, half musician, and it just wasn't really working. And you know, my mental health wasn't great, and so I just basically, you know, threw my job onto a fire and left. um, and yeah, I was kind of into sex worker advocacy before that. You know, I've always been sort of transgressive, and you know, not really seeing why anyone would have issues with that. You know, always just questioning the status quo, and thinking people, consenting adults, should be free to do what they want as long as it doesn't harm anyone. So yeah, interestingly, it was my ex that started, like, they indicated they were going to get sex work. I was like, huh, never thought of that. You know, didn't really think it was something I could get into. Didn't have a lot of, you know, self-confidence or anything like that. But yeah, I just threw myself out there onto, you know, good old Backpage when it was around, and Craigslist, and anywhere I could throw out an ad. And yeah, just you know, just started from there. And I started mainly as just full service, servicing, you know, all genders. I threw out a bunch of different gender personas out there because that was something I was always comfortable with and exploring as well. Yeah, and then my third booking basically wanted BDSM. They were like, look, my mistress is out of town and I want someone to dominate me. I'm like, yeah, cool. Will you be like providing money? Because I'm up for it then, you know. So it's kind of hilarious. My first ever BDSM session, I had this idea of what, like, you know, a dominatrix would do. And so I turned up, you know, in full makeup, full dress and everything. And you know, he was a lovely guy and he wanted to be fisted and all that. So I basically ended up fisting him while asking him about his childhood when I was, like, you know, wrist deep inside him. And yeah, that was just hilarious. Like, you know, it was quite funny because he was just chattering away about, you know, the life that he'd had while I was like doing that. And I was like, wow, this is everything. You know, I'm kind of
Yeah.
I love the
I feel like
psychological
that's a
aspect
good
of it.
psychological mind fuck you just gave him.
Right? Yeah. And I mean, the funny thing was he was so deeply comfortable with it. You know, he was just gaily chatting away. I was like, this is fabulous, you know.
Gave him
So
just what he needed.
yeah. And so from then on, yeah, I just got into doing like BDSM as well, and getting training and learning a lot of stuff. And getting to porn was actually only happened like maybe 3 years ago now. And it was like a client slash partner slash worker who basically was like, hey, do you want to film as well? I was like, yeah, cool. I'll give that a shot. Again, it's something, even though I got into sex work, I never thought I'd be getting to porn either, because, you know, body image issues and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, I've just gone on from there and, you know, just gone for it. And I'm really happy with where I am.
Right on.
Pandemics aside.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I very much relate to what you're saying about kind of hating living in that corporate environment before, being always sexual, like many of us on the panel, and just thinking like, why not? And why are there these stigmas in society? So it's like almost like challenging them. So that's very cool. So now that you've started your sex work career, you're getting into it, you're exploring, when was it that the people around you that knew you in your previous, you know, iteration of self, when they started finding out about your sex work, did you feel like, I'm going to tell them, or did they find out somehow? Like, what was that experience like? Who wants to go first? I know this one could be a little bit touchy, so I'll let you guys volunteer. Yes, Stoya, please.
I told everyone and still tell everyone. Like, one time I was at JFK, 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to get a McBiscuit, and my bank card didn't have a chip in it. And the person behind the counter is like, why don't you have a chip? Chips were required like 6 months ago. And I'm like, well, I have a small bank. Why don't you have like a big bank, like Bank of America? And I'm like, well, I'm a sex worker, and there was this thing called Operation Choke Point, And so I went to the small bank that said they would like give me a call if they were going to send a check for my balance under pressure from the Department of Justice. And she's like, wow, you're really honest about this. And I'm like, you change one mind at a time. Can you just swipe it? Thank you. Uh, and certain conversations involved a lot of people reacting to anti-sex work, feminist rhetoric about what porn is. My grandma was hilarious. She was like, "Oh, so you're a nudie girl?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
That's
Uh,
so cute.
the whole story is in Jiz's anthology, coming out like a porn star. And my mom though makes snide comments about whether I spent all day finding eyelashes that match my pubic hair. And you just kind of like let it roll off, right? Like it's like, well, actually, no, mom, I spent all day finding press-on nails that match my lingerie, but close enough.
Yes. That's awesome. My grandma had kind of a similar reaction, except she's Mexican. So she goes, "Oh, Traviesa movie star," which Traviesa is bad girl. So I was like, yes, I'm one of those. So let's hear someone else's coming out story. How was that for them, whether it was something that was revealed or something that they chose to come out with to their friends or family?
Okay, me.
Yes, Izzy, please.
Um, when I got into the industry, my family is Colombian, super conservative. So, and I was always like the little girl that they are like taking care of about like the dangers of the world, blah blah blah. So I was like really afraid about how they might feel about it because as I said, they're conservative. So that was like my only fear. So my plan was to like get into the industry, like have like a good life, like so that they knew that it was like a serious like decision that I made, that I was not fucking around, blah blah blah. And that was my plan, but it didn't go like that. Like I was shooting one day here in LA, and a friend texted me from, like, we use WhatsApp, so she messaged me through WhatsApp and she was like, oh my god, you fucked up. And I was like, why? And she was like, this video is here all over like the city, all over town, and why did you let someone film you having sex? And I was like, no, I'm doing porn. Like, that's not it. What do you think? And
Oh, she thought it was like a leaked sex tape.
yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
oh, how
He
funny.
was like POV, and
Yeah. Oh, okay,
I
okay.
saw the whole thing. So she thought it was like something like it leaked, and I was like, no, I'm doing porn. And she was like, okay, like everyone is sending like a package through all, like they make like a group, and they were like sending all of my content, and I stopped talking to her, and 5 minutes later my mom was like, what the fuck, I just saw a video of you doing porn, like what's that? And I was like, mom, I'm working right now, when I'm done I will like talk to you. But yeah, it's true. I'm good, I'm safe, and that's it. Then she called me and she was like, okay, like it's your life, you can do whatever you want, like you're a grown up, but are you guys getting saved? Because like I saw the video, and you guys don't use a condom. And that was her, like her mainly concern about like me being in the sex work, because she was like, you're not doing nothing illegal, like you have to pay taxes, like whatever you do, you're crazy, but okay. And yeah, I explained that to her. She was like, it's not that clear to me, like you can still have it. Like I was like, yeah, but like a pilot can still die, like it's a risk, like that's the risk of my work, and that's okay by me. And yeah, that's how they all found out. Like the person that I most cared the most was my mom, and she took it really well. Like now we have a really good relationship. And yeah, that was it. Like my all everyone find out because of WhatsApp practically.
That it's I feel like I could visualize that like it was like an episode in a TV show or something.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you went through that, but I'm so happy that the reaction and relationship with your mom is good now, because that's important. So yeah, I was like even tense just listening to that.
No, and it was like a whole weekend. I was like people were posting on Facebook a status about that. I was like, okay. They were like saying my real name, and they were like guessing my high school. I was like, I graduated like so long ago. Who fucking cares what high school did I went? But yeah, it was. But yeah, I only care about my family. Like the other people, I already talk about my friends about that. They already knew that I was going to do I was going to be a sex worker, so I was fine with that. They were like encouraging me, so I was like, okay, I'm in a good place. But my family were
the main people that matter supported you. Everybody else is the bullshit we already know that's out.
Exactly.
Good. Aw. Okay. Sai or Jiz, did either one of you have your coming out or being outed story that you would like to share? Yes, Jiz. Go.
Okay. I am going to keep mine like somewhat generalized because I like to joke that they're not here to defend themselves. Like it was hard and it's still hard, you know? And it's been like a long time, it's been years. And, you know, I think that's one of the things about coming out. It's like, it's not just a one-time thing and then you're done usually, right? So it's continual repercussions or continual, you know, good things and joy and support. It really depends. Some of my family I was able to tell, some of them told others, which is also an element too of like disclosure, where if you give someone information, then they have to make the choice of whether or not to disclose if given the opportunity. So for the most part, my family is open-minded and loving. And so I'm really grateful for that. But, you know, coming out as queer was hard enough. So I knew that
before, like previously.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So when I came out to those I came out to, I told them that, you know, for the reason why I haven't told you is because it was so hard. You know, like this has been like over
Aww.
Like,
I love you so much, Jiz. I would like squeeze and hug you right now.
I'm gonna say it's like the nerves on top of on top of everything. But you know, and they still haven't read this book, and I'm kind of not wanting them to read it. But well, not all of them. Anyway, it's complicated, right?
Right. Yeah. Summer.
Yeah.
Summer. Wanting school and can't quite get there.
Yeah, there's definitely family members who are no longer in my life, and I wish that weren't the case, but I also feel better for it. If, you know, if they can't meet me where I'm at, then, you know, I try, you know. And I think in an ideal situation, I sort of like family, like I know the person first before I disclose. You know, my partner knew I did porn before we started dating, so that was relatively easy.
That's good.
And like with other people in my life that I'd come out to, like I want them to know who I am at my core first before, and I think that sex work is part of my core, but I want them to be able to incorporate that without like projecting stigmas if that's where they're coming from. I want to be able to break whatever stereotypes that they have, and then discuss that together and help them understand, as opposed to just be shut down immediately, which happened with some extended family. So yeah.
I definitely relate to what you're saying about extended family. I mean, just to give a short story real quick, one of my favorite cousins I thought was my favorite cousin growing up, we no longer talk. And another cousin happened to be way more supportive and almost went with me to AVN and stuff. So it's like the people that you think aren't the ones that are going to be there, and the ones that you think are going to be there, it just surprises you sometimes. But yeah, it's rough. It's rough. And Sai, how was your coming out story? Whether you can also incorporate like as a like your sexual expression or also your sex work. Did that come before, or was it like all together?
No, so I mean, like I've always been pretty out about being gender fluid and stuff, and like, you know, my mom was pretty, like my immediate family was pretty cool with like everything from the get-go. I remember like I went to my year 12 formal in this lovely like black evening dress. My mum did my makeup for me and everything. So that's always been out. I was always quite open to them about my sexuality. They did drill it into me that they wanted me to feel comfortable talking to them about anything, that they'd rather know and know that I was safe than for me to hide stuff from them. And that's been a really, like, I feel really deeply privileged to have had that kind of support, and to, know that that was all fine. There was never any expectation for me to go into any particular career or anything like that. They just like really just wanted to know that I was happy. So coming out to my mum about sex workers, my dad's passed on. So coming out to her, like I did it in the middle of a mall. We were having lunch and I was just like, so like, you're probably wondering what I'm doing for money. Like, this is what I'm doing. And yeah, her number one, concern was like, are you safe doing this? And then second is like, are you happy? So she was on the surface kind of okay with it. But, it's been years now. And, even recently, we had to have a discussion, because we kind of drifted apart a bit. And I was like, look, part of that is like, I can sense a bit of judgment still when we talk about things, and I just don't want to really go there. And she did bring up again, like, it makes me sad that you're using your body to make money. I was like, why does that make you sad? Like, I just said, what? I just wanted to know why. And she was like, well, like, do you feel like you don't have a choice? Or like, is it something you want to do? And I was like, no, it's definitely something I want to do. It's definitely the place where I feel comfortable. It feels vocational. I feel like I've come home. I'm happier now than I've ever been in any other job. In some ways it's more stressful than any other job, but I'm definitely more fulfilled than anything else I've done. And, that really helps. So it is an ongoing thing with her. My sister was great. She was just like, do it well and take their cash. And I was just like, hell yes. All my friends, I pretty much just came out to them. I've always been just a transgressive shit since high school. So, no one was surprised. I was a musician. None of them cared. It's kind of like, oh, you're a sex worker, so when's the next album? I went to a high school reunion and, my ex from high school was just like, I'm just surprised it took you this long. So, like in a very fun, fun way.
Totally.
It's just like, you
like they
always
expected
crazy.
most likely to become sex worker type superlative.
Yeah. So, I've been really lucky in that sense. Like, I'm kind of a bit estranged from my extended family. It's just drifted apart over time. I came out on Facebook, and one of them's like a, kind of evangelical Catholic person, but we still kind of vaguely chat at times, so it seems cool, I guess. Yeah, that's my little journey.
That's awesome to hear. I'm just like soaking in all of the different stories, because so many of us, whether took it in our, in our own hands and decided like just gonna tell certain people, and some of us didn't have a choice and were just outed and we had to deal with the repercussions as they came. I think it's very important that a lot of the things that you guys mentioned that kind of put everybody that question you about at ease is like, are you safe? Are you happy? And those are the main things that I think that matter most in any kind of work you're doing, especially like something with so much stigma. Everyone assumes the worst. So yes, that's very cool to emphasize the safety aspect, because it's true, you could actually die in other jobs. Like at most I've like scraped a knee and got like pink eye. Everything which is curable. But so we've talked a little bit about how that was coming out, and that it is an ongoing conversation, and that's so true. Coming out, especially about sex work, is never just a one-time thing, because people later on end up hearing something and then they think, oh my God, is this what's happening to you? Or they see something and they want to ask you about it, and you always kind of have to re-explain what it is that the job does. So how do you handle that? Like, do you have like really deep conversations with the loved ones in your life when they are coming from a place of ignorance, not like hateful ignorance, but just like trying to understand, like, what are the things that you emphasize about how you exist in this world of sex work, for people that have questions of like, why are you doing this? Yeah, Jiz.
I will say that I made a mistake early on coming out, and if it's anecdotal and helpful for anyone to hear, and it's also in the book too, but like when I was coming out to one of my parents, I likened it to like I tried to the like whorephobia, right? I tried to be like, but it's like this movie, right? It's like short bus. It's like, you know, I gave it like this kind of cinematic weight that sort of, I didn't say it's not like this XYZ porn, but I definitely was like trying to exalt it higher than maybe I should have, which bit me in the ass when some like hardcore BDSM, like more POV sort of like stuff came out. And so I feel that was a big learning lesson for me. And it doesn't serve anyone any good to throw other forms of sex work under the bus when trying to like appeal to someone's more like, you know, like I'm gonna be like, it's so sophisticated, it's so good, it's so like, right? I don't know if I'm
Yeah,
explaining that correctly, but
playing into the hierarchy, like, well, this form of sex work that I'm doing is slightly better and cooler than this, which is like what we're not talking about.
right.
But
And I never said than this, but I definitely skewed towards that, you know, which is like, you know,
yeah,
and yeah, and it wasn't right then, and I felt like it wasn't right then, and then it's sure enough, like, you know, I paid the price for that. But so if that's helpful for anyone to hear, like trying to reach someone where they're at, understanding why it wasn't helpful to me, like to try to put it up on a higher sort of thing.
I totally get what you're saying, because I feel like, especially in the early times of my career, I tried to do that with new people that I would meet. Like, oh, well, I only do these certain types of scenes, or I pick, you know, I can choose to do this if I want, and kind of trying to make a separation of, oh, I don't just do porn. But now I love that I can accept that, yes, you know, all forms of sex work are equally, you know, great in all forms. And I don't feel like I guess it was my own personal stigma, having come from previously not been in sex work, still kind of like playing into that, like, oh, well, I'm not a full on set, I do this only on set, you know. And you're right, I don't think it serves anyone any good, because it only reinforces in other people's minds, yes, some of it is bad, you know. And I don't think that's the right approach. That's a good thing to bring up, Jiz. Anyone else? How do you talk with people in general when they're like, why do you do this? What does this do for you? Like, how do you kind of explain the involvement in sex work for people that may come from ignorance? Could pick on someone. Okay, go, Sai.
Yeah, I guess, like, you know, definitely for me, it's so vocational. Like I feel it deep in my bones. Like, you know, I love the journeys I can take people on, and the, you know, the moves that I create, and the, you know, the safe spaces that you can make for people to like unveil those most vulnerable parts of themselves, you know, with in-person work and stuff like that. So, you know, that's kind of what I say. And also just you know, it is it's something everyone does. Like, you know, we all have sex, we all explore erotically. You know, there's a place for it, and there's a need for it. And, you know, I basically just want to do it. You know, why should you have a problem with that? It doesn't harm anyone. You know, I've dug deep into like a lot of the you know, values around things, and I tend to question people's like, well, why do you think that there's a problem with this? You know, and sort of work from their own personal places of shame or judgment on that. Again, you know, I guess I'm lucky in that no one's really questioned me that much. The most questions I've gotten have been from my mum around it. And yeah, it was just about like convincing them it was safe, and that was something that I needed to do.
That's awesome. And Stoya and Izzy, how do you talk to people about why it is sex work is something that you feel comfortable in?
You know, I try not to unsettle people with language. So, for instance, the mature European Airbnb host, right? Like I'm like, oh, I perform in a kind of thing called pornography. I don't start with like, yes, I'm a professional whore. So that helps. And I do a lot of trying to lead people to their own kind of shifting. So, like, oh, but you're selling your body. Well, let's talk about my grandpa, who at 55, his body was wrecked because he was a stonemason. So, is that selling your body? And that can help people kind of like ground pornography in the rest of the world. Do you worry about fans? Well, does Kim Kardashian worry about fans? Like we all saw what happened to her a couple of years ago in Paris. And a lot of it is actively listening for what the person's fear is and how that can budge. So it's all individual, and it's kind of like know your customer. Like it's like, all right, this family member, I know what their deal is. Let's pick on my mom again. I don't bring her, I'm really excited about this movie I just shot with Mickey Maud. Like, I'm like, I have a chapter in Jisley's anthology on coming out. That's so that kind of like eases things, where I just having informed her, I'm like, okay, now she knows, and she doesn't want to hear about the details. And so I will only tell her the things that aren't going to really upset her, because her beliefs are her beliefs. And it doesn't feel right to me to try to force her to like see everything.
Yeah, I can appreciate your point of view on that. That's important. Because sometimes I feel like some of us as porn stars, which people can be however they want, really revel in kind of throwing people off their center by being like, yeah, I suck dick for a living. And like, cool, yeah, like we do, but I get where you're coming from, and I think that people appreciate that approach. Izzy.
Okay, I sometimes don't say I do porn because it's
That's perfectly
annoying.
fine. Everyone has their own way of handling things. That's why we have a variety of people here.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I say I'm just an actress because like my brain is there like analyzing the whole person, and in a second I'm like I'm an actress. But
Yeah.
like if I know that person can handle I do porn, I will go for I do porn. But like now I have that filter, because like at the beginning I was like saying openly I do porn when everyone finds out, but I start like getting all these sometimes this like judgment eyes, and they were like but they were like, oh, it's super nice. It was super fake, so I was like, no, I rather not handle with that. So sometimes I said I perform or I'm an actress, but yeah.
Yeah, you got to protect your energy. So if you have to do that in certain cases, I commend that too, because you're right. Not everyone actually deserves to know your truth.
Yeah.
So
And everyone, like the first question they ask you, like even if you met them for a second, is like, what do you do? Like
yeah,
we're on a line, like trying to get some coffee or whatever, and you start like talking to the person next to you, and they're like, oh, and what do you do? You're like, oh my God, I'm not gonna ever see you again. Like
yeah. I totally know what you're saying, girls. Yeah, you're like, I'm just an actress. You don't need to know the rest.
Exactly. I'm like, I act like that's my thing. And they're like, oh, okay, nice. I'm like, yeah, I just like try to flip it, and I just ask them a conversation about themselves and make them talk, and I will not do the talking.
You have a very smart tactic, because you're right. People love talking about themselves. Ask them
Yeah.
the question.
Yeah, exactly. You talk. I'm not gonna even listen to you. Just talk.
Love it. Love it. So one question I have is, once people kind of found out, the people you care about the most, not outside random people, but the people that are at your core, once they found out about you performing in sex work, did that change your mentality in any way of how you approach your work habits in any way? Like, did it make you change anything in any way now that you know the people that you love know what you're doing? And to say that, this is what I'm going to say. I know for me, it made me be more aware of how I presented myself at family functions. Like, I was always kind of like the cutesy one, but now I'm like, let me downplay that just a little bit more, because now I feel like I'm drawing attention to myself. And as far as work goes, I talked about it a lot less. And look, we have our last finalist that finally was able to join us from all the way from the England area, Prince John C. I'll let him go ahead and get connected, and then we'll start asking him questions. But in the meantime, yeah, has that happened for anyone where you kind of change some habits a little bit once people find out about your work, the people you care about?
Well, I guess like for me, not really, because everyone found out quite early on in my career, so that's a bit of a non-event, I guess. It's going to be challenging once I guess I have a child and they start being conscious of what I do, or like, I start having to meet up with people having to do with them, and that's going to be a new phase of questioning everything, I guess, and assessing things.
Well, with that said, I am a parent, and we did have a parenting panel in the same series earlier. If you wanted to look on the playlist on our YouTube channel,
I definitely will.
Tips. Yeah, there might be some tips from some already porn parents that could help you with that. And also feel free to reach out to me at any time. I feel like we're connected now.
Thank you.
Yay, we have Prince John C on the screen. Go ahead and unmute for us and introduce yourself, please. You can.
Where the hell's my audio not working?
I think you're unmuted now.
Okay, so you just heard that in the outburst. Eradicate that plot. Hi everyone, Prince Jean. Hope everybody is okay. So just an introduction to myself. I've been in the industry a couple of years, in production, but also in content as well. I've worked in I've done different things within the industry. I started out as a fashion model, believe it or not. So for about 2 years, I didn't even go topless. And now here I am doing this sort of stuff. So massive transition from managing sort of like suits and things for like big brands to what I do now.
Awesome. And I could totally believe that you were a model beforehand. Just to kind of catch you back up to speed with everything that we've been discussing, do you want to quickly go into why you got into sex work and how you came out to family?
Yes, definitely. So in terms of how I got in, as I progressed in my modeling career, I started to cross paths with more and more people who were sex workers. So they started to follow me on Instagram because we just started following each other on Instagram, just due to the sort of organic crossover that there is between some people who model and also people who do more higher levels in terms of their work. So I came across a performer, Lacey Starr, and we got talking. And after our shoot, we discussed potentially working together. So we did a photo shoot together, and then we did a video shoot together. Went really well. She offered me pizza, which for me is pretty much the way you get me, offer me food. So it went really well. And then she invited me back. Then I started attending a few of the UK events, and got to meet more and more people in the industry. And then I started connecting with sort of companies and brands and producers. In terms of how that then filters in terms of coming out to family, I suppose being new to adult work, I should have controlled the narrative, but I didn't. So my mother kind of just organically found out. So that wasn't particularly fun conversation. Because most of the way in which people view the industry is usually through the veil of what they see in the media. So when you see a lot of documentaries and things talking about human trafficking, that is usually their equation and their first association to the industry. So there's fear, disgust, and genuine warrant for safety. There's a whole bunch of emotions that they go through, and they'll pretty much let it out on you there at that point. And me coming from, I'm Afro-Latina, Afro-Palestinian, so none of those cultures are particularly sex work friendly. So there's that also added cultural element. In terms of my dad, I did try to control that narrative. He was not half impressed. Yeah, it was a very lengthy conversation. I tried to explain just a little bit about the industry, the ins and outs. That was an ongoing conversation that took place for the better part of a year and a half. But in terms of being proactive in coming out, the first thing I learned is we live in a digital age. Nothing stays hidden in a digital age, and things will come out, especially if you're doing production work. Secondly, when you are proactive in coming out, regardless of the reaction, it allows you to better be able to control the narrative. So even though my dad flipped, I was better able to control the narrative because I had initiated that discussion.
I think, thank you so much for both of those, you know, anecdotes, because I feel like it shows both sides, you know, like one where you're outed, you weren't able to control the narrative, and one where you took it upon yourself with the other parent to speak to him about it. And I think that's, you know, that's brave, because it could be hard for us either way. And I think, yeah, that's, you know, I think it's commendable that you're able to talk about these things. I know this is a difficult subject. Yeah, and especially the fact that you joined late, but one of the things you said that all of us kind of mentioned is it is an ongoing conversation about how this work is, how you enjoy this work, how you operate, live happily, prosper and stuff, for people that have all these stigmas from the way the media has portrayed our lives. So thank you for that and being able to join. One of the questions I had just asked when you joined was, now that people, your loved ones and family know about your sex work, did it change your work habits in any way, or the way that you perhaps promote or advertise yourself or any way?
Yes, I was initially, in terms of advertising, a little apprehensive, quite restrictive in how I did it, just because I was sort of managing the emotional fallout between ongoing discussions with family members. And I think someone earlier mentioned parenting. Just to throw it out there, I'm a legal guardian to my 5 cousins. So I have 5 small ones that I look after. That has been the case now for a number of years. So there was a different discussion that I had to have with sort of social services and things to show safety, competence, all of that stuff, despite the fact we've gone through all of that with courts. In terms of, I'm not kind of rambling here. Sorry, what was the question again?
No, it's okay. It was just you started answering it for sure. It's just, did your work habits change now that people found out?
That is it. Yes. So I became more aware of my advertising. I feel like a lot of people have probably found me in the last year, but I've been around for years, and that's because of a direct shift in the way in which I sort of advertised, marketed. I was more consistent. I was more open. I was more vocal with it. And I started to spread my wings quite a bit. So going to like AVN last year, for example, especially being based in the UK, you don't typically tend to be able to go to American-based sort of like events, especially not AVN, which is like pretty much in terms of scale, like pretty much up there in terms of the biggest, in terms of size. So yeah, there was a clear shift in my in my marketing sort of like after I had come out, because I sort of almost took the training wheels off and went for it a lot more than I had previously.
That's cool. That's cool. That's actually an unexpected answer for the I mean, I just asked the question not knowing how people would answer, and I'm really glad that it kind of liberated you in a sense. That's cool. Anyone else, Jiz or Stoya or Izzy, did your work habits change in any way once you knew the people you love knew about your work?
my work habits didn't change until I found out that both of my parents know about my blog.
Mm.
And then for a while, it was like I would love to write this compelling story to promote this sex scene. But, and then there was a conversation about like, you know, like all my internet stuff is very Stoya, and like you can look at it at your own risk, and maybe it's just best for everyone if you don't.
I completely get what you're saying about the blog thing, because someone had asked me before, like, oh, why didn't you come to your blog? I feel like people are literally looking into my soul, and that's way too much, but I could bust this, you know, bust it open on camera, and that feels way more comfortable.
My experience is similar to Soya's about blogging. And
Uh,
as one of my family members said that they'd read my blog, someone who was supportive, which should have been encouraging to be like, oh, I'll start blogging more. But instead, I think I went silent for like a couple months. Just like, I don't know what to write now.
right.
It's so strange that we're more comfortable to communicate with strangers on the internet than people that we know in person.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Izzy.
No, I don't think so. Like, I just assume my family is not watching my porn. And if they do, it's under their own risks. So, like, yeah.
Yeah, I love you're like, I'm not the one putting your eyes on it. It's just out
Yeah,
there.
exactly. It's just yeah.
Awesome. Oh my goodness. So what would any of you I guess give advice to anyone that may not have come out yet? Like if you could start over and you're like new sex worker, you haven't come out yet, what would you give advice to that person about how to approach this? Yes, Stoya.
Do not drink an entire bottle of wine first.
Don't get the liquid courage, just use real courage.
No, yeah, it's not good. You end up with like a very fuzzy recollection, and then you're like, oh, did I actually tell her? Did I dream that? I guess I have to bring it up again. It's not a good idea. Do not make that mistake that I clearly made.
Awesome. Anyone else, any advice about coming out about your sex work?
I think Prince John mentioned it earlier about, I don't remember the words used, but like constructing the space to tell your parent versus not having the ability to construct it first. I don't know if that's the right, constructing is the right way
Oh
to
yeah,
say it.
yeah. Controlling and
Yeah,
constructing the narrative.
controlling. Yeah,
Yeah.
the narrative. Yes. So being able to have a space that you feel comfortable in, that and not just only the space, but like maybe like protections around your life as well. I think we all have different situations, whether it's like being a caregiver to someone else, having dependents, or living situations. Just being able to make sure you have a fail safe, I guess. Like if your family does cut you out in some
Yeah.
way, that you're gonna be able to have safety around that, whether it's community, whether it's financial support, whatever that means. And then in terms of that space, being able to have the time and to have that environment be the most conducive for you to be able to have that, like, be able to talk about it, whether it means being somewhere in public where you can like have a conversation at a cafe, if that feels like a good space for you to have that conversation, or on a walk somewhere, or, like wherever that environment feels safest, I guess, and most comfortable to you. And for one of the experiences I had, we had a bit of like aftercare moment that was pretty sweet, where we had to sit in like a hot spring, basically, which I couldn't, it was the other person's idea, but I couldn't have planned that better because it felt really caring afterwards, even though the conversations that we had were difficult. And I felt like there was anger and some emotions that came up afterwards. Being able to have like a sweet moment together kind of soothed things and helped the conversation continue later on.
Yeah, I like that. I like that, setting the mood, setting the stage for your own comfort kind of thing. That's really important. Really important. Just as you were saying, I was like, God, yeah, that would have been so much better if I could take my mom on a walk instead. Prince, Sai, or Izzy, do you have any advice for any new sex worker that may not know how to approach the coming out process?
Yes. I mentioned controlling the narrative, and that was something that was just discussed. But in terms of that, just to hone in that a little bit more, having a idea of what you want to say may help. So it depends on the individual, and I am taking into consideration that people also come from different, not just different situations, but also people have different intersecting identities. So as a result, their traumas, their anxieties, and the things that trigger them in how they perceive these conversations to go are going to be very nuanced. So having an idea of what to say in terms of how you're going to either maybe ease into that conversation. I know that when I was trying to control the narrative, I knew that because I was basically just worried that my mother was going to tell my dad. I sort of just went like full scale head into that, and in hindsight, that might not have been the best idea. So just having an idea. For some people, they might need to literally write it down. I know some people who have literally written down, like, okay, then I'm going to talk about sort of the reasons why first, and then go into this is the decision I've made, and these are the reasons why I've done it. For other people, that's not going to work. So I'm not saying there's a one size fits all, but just some forethought in the way in which you are going to control the narrative. What is the actual narrative? May help in then being able to at least influence the environment where you can have something of a productive discussion. I know coming from sort of a Afro-Palestinian and Afro-Latino background, our an African response is just to go for a wooden spoon or a slipper. So like, so I know that like for like people from that background, like that might be their reality. I know that having spoken to a few others, like that was a response from their parents. So obviously everybody's situation is different, but yeah, just having a construction in your mind of what that narrative might be, it also might help you to be bit more focused, because you're going to be tense, probably anxious, especially if you are anticipating a negative response. So just giving yourself some structure might also calm your nerves as well.
What great advice. Thank you so much. I feel like that outline idea is such a good tool for anybody nervous about what to say. Izzy, what would your advice be?
I will just say, do you? Like, being a sex worker is just hard. Like, just taking that step forward is hard. So do you, like, take your time, and I don't know, like, take one step at a time. Like, if you feel you have to talk. If you feel you have to get caught, so do that. Like, I don't know. Like, I would love to have the opportunity and say it, but I don't regret this either. So, like, everything will come. So yeah, do you?
That's awesome. I love your approach to everything. Just do you. Don't worry about the rest. And Sai, what would your advice be to any new sex worker not knowing how to approach the coming out?
It would definitely to have like a support network, especially like a peer support network. When I came out, like I didn't really have any close peers in the industry. It would have been really great to like have joined up with some of the advocacy groups, like in Australia we've got like Vixen Collective and Scarlet Alliance and stuff, and they can put you in touch with support services, and just like all the members are current or past sex workers. So there can be that sense of isolation, and if you don't have anyone in the industry to talk to, if it goes really bad, like that can be really really awful. So 100% would suggest like reaching out to other workers, or any of those groups to just have that there for you.
I love that. Well, we are getting close to the end right here of our webinar program. And I just want to say everything that you guys shared was so extremely helpful. and useful information, great advice, very heartfelt. Thank you so much for sharing such deep memories in your life and work history. And yeah, just thank you for being able to share this for the people that are really going to benefit from this knowledge. And yeah, if you want to just go around and say goodbye or any last closing remarks.
Can I share some resources?
Yes, yes,
I think
that is what I'm talking about. Yes.
Okay. So besides my book, which has a lot of over 50 stories, it's very anecdotal, and there's something I think that everyone can connect to on some experience that might be helpful to reflect on your own situation. There's also this book by Lola Davis that I love that's called Thriving in Sex Work. And it also covers coming out as well, in addition to some of my financial considerations and emotional considerations. And then she made a worksheet book where basically you get to fill in, if anyone's a nerd and wants to do sex work homework, you get to fill in and like draw and basically like coming out action plans. And she's got little check boxes and things like, who are my support networks, who are my friends I can, talk to afterwards, what am I going to do? What happens when you get outed? So if you want book research and that kind of homework resources, I definitely recommend those books. And also the Free Speech Coalition's website and the Inspire program, and then other networks wherever you might be. I know there's like APAC here in the U.S., but there's a lot of sex worker organizations that can provide peer support.
Thank you so much for sharing that, and especially your book. I feel like everybody needs to read that, and at least Lola's book too, because I mean, they've got so much information that helps people do well in our work. So with that said, can I take a selfie? Like a group pic. All right. Everyone get in your little happy face position. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. Yeah, any other last closing remarks from anyone? If not, we'll just say goodbye.
I just want to read Jiz's book.
Yeah.
Like it
really is helpful. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's part of why I was so happy to have both you and Jiz be a part of this panel, because that book was so helpful. And both of you, it's Jiz's book, had stories in there. So I just don't think enough people know how valuable that is when you're in a place of uncertainty in this coming out process.
Yeah, I learned stuff. It helped me feel less alone. Like, it's amazing.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Or another a quick a resource that has been quite invaluable to a lot in the industry is Pineapple Support.
Oh yes, Pineapple Support.
They do some really, really good work. I will be honest, I wasn't really too familiar with them until I was out in Vegas. I met someone there. And yeah, I got to understand a little bit about their work, but they have supported quite a few people across the industry. And they have trained professionals, so they're also a good resource that people could potentially leverage to help them in managing this, especially from a emotional or a support sort of framework perspective.
Absolutely. Okay. If there's anything else anyone wants to contribute, now's the time. All right. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for helping people understand the importance of the topics that we discussed and how to come out and be your best self. Everyone take care. Happy Thursday. Bye.